There only really have been 3 physicists throughout history who have managed to enter popular culture through their sheer brilliance. First off, we had Isaac Newton. He used an apple as a device to communicate the idea of gravity to other people. And another one was Stephen Hawking. He used an Apple device to communicate his ideas to other people. And between these two lay another great man. And that man's name was Albert Einstein. Yeah, I assume that basically you heard about him in history class, but there was another thing about Einstein that your teacher might have suspiciously left out of the curriculum. You see, Einstein was a staunch opponent of capitalism. He even wrote an article about it called Why Socialism. And to be fair, it is probably kind of a known fact to you because, leftists, when they're losing an argument, they can just say, you think that socialism is for dum-dums? Well, here's Einstein saying socialism good. Chad owned. But in any case, a lot of people probably share that little factoid that Einstein was a socialist without really reading about what he thought about socialism, right? It's kind of that classic leftist meme. You never read. Not even theory, you just don't read. In any case, this video, ladies and gentlemen and NBs, is going to be specifically about that. We're going to read that article of Einstein and try to answer once and for all, why socialism? The year was 1949 and Einstein was a 70-year-old grandpa living in New England. He was approached by a group of Marxist professors who, were soon to be purged by McCarthy, but they were busy starting a newspaper, a journal called The Monthly Review, which, by the way, that sounds like a placeholder title. There's no way that they're still up and called that. Oh, well, never mind. They were going to do their first edition of the magazine, and they come up to Einstein. They know that he's a bit of a leftist, and they ask him for, a nice article to put into this first edition to popularize it even further. So, in the article, Einstein begins by recalling a conversation that he had with a friend of his. And let's call that friend Doomer. So Doomer basically says to Einstein, I am pretty much okay with humanity going extinct following a nuclear war. And Einstein is completely taken aback by this friend. And throughout this article, he is going to try to establish why there is this wider problem in society of people like Doomer existing. Why does society suck so badly is going to be the theme of this article. And just kind of as a side note, I understand Einstein's reaction because think about it. Nowadays, sure, we spend every waking hour thinking this could end at any second in a nuclear annihilation, and probably a lot of us, myself included, think, yeah, it probably would be a good thing. But think about Einstein. For 65 years of his life, until 1945, the idea that humanity could destroy itself completely was alien to him. And likewise, think about it, it's 1949 and people should be looking forward to a bright future, but somehow it's not there, and people are being doomers. So, according to Einstein's analysis in that article, we kind of have 2 wolves inside of us. One is an individualist, a little Sigma grindset billionaire who wants to, be left alone, develop his skills, be paid for them, etc., etc. And the other wolf that every single person has inside of them is the social being. The sort of guy who wants to give back to the community, who wants to be respected and enjoy being with other people. And basically, there is an equilibrium, and where it lies depends on societal and genetic factors, according to Einstein. And the second phenomenon that kind of builds on this idea of there being 2 wolves inside of us is that these 2 wolves are kind of being disturbed right now. And this is through technological progress. You see, Einstein basically describes the beginnings of globalization, which basically nowadays the means of production are very much advanced and they need to be concentrated in specific places. And what does that lead to? It leads to communities not being self-sufficient anymore. Like, a village is not going to build a tractor for itself. It needs that outside connection to survive. So Einstein kind of connects these 2 dots about how we have 2 wolves inside of us and how technology has kind of changed the way in which we interact with one another. And he says that this basically leads to an imbalance where both of the wolves inside of us are not happy anymore. Because the individualist, he is so dependent on society even more than ever before. You see, you need a smartphone, for example, and to get that smartphone, you basically need to source it from like 100 countries where different parts are manufactured for that phone, which is in some sense a terrifying idea. For example, you posting on Twitter, if you're taken into a Ted Kaczynski-style shack in the woods, you wouldn't survive. You would die from like internet withdrawal syndrome in like 12 hours. Not even talking about, trying to fend for oneself without this connection to society. And on the other hand, think about a 19th century peasant. Like, that guy could have completely checked out of society, become an individualist, and like, not much would have changed for him. His way of life would have been similar. Nowadays, impossible. So basically, Einstein says, we do live in a society and it sucks. So that's the individualist wolf being unhappy. And the other one, the sort of communal wolf, is also unhappy. Like, we live in a society where you're constantly bombarded with the idea of egotism, and the idea of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps kind of inherently involves spending less time with your community to focus on yourself. And this is through media, through advertising, and through education. And, that wolf is not going to be happy anymore. So basically, Einstein develops this idea, and then he kind of branches out his thoughts into what other things suck about capitalism and current society. So Einstein mentions the labor theory of value, how your boss has to pay you less than your labor is worth in order to turn a profit himself. And he mentions how means of production are owned by selfish actors who kind of want to undercut the competition and pay as little as possible to their workers. This total domination of capitalists, the owners of the means of production, is deepened even further by the fact that capitalists control both political parties and the media. Hey you! Yes, you. Are you interested in starting a business? Job creators like us, we kind of have to fend for ourselves, and the gold industry, which is what I'm talking about, is a bit difficult to get into, and basically, to turn a profit, we're going to have to cut some corners and perhaps, dump a bunch of toxic waste into a lake in the middle of a national park, stuff like that. Are you with me on here? Dude, that is like exactly what I want to do, but isn't there like a system of checks and balances that makes sure that like I can't really do that? I would love to, but can I? You silly goose, haven't they taught you anything at the Ivy League school of your choice? I feel like I shouldn't tell him that I went to the new school in order to get a bachelor's degree in being a mime. No, they don't teach that at Princeton anymore, I guess. Okay, so let me do the educating. You see, there are no checks and balances. We decide what they are. So what we are going to do is pay like $1 million each to the Federalist Society, and when they elect a conservative judge, we are going to come back to them and ask for a little something in return. Yo guys, just a quick heads up, never ever research Core Alaska Incorporated versus Southeast Alaska Conservation Council et al. There is nothing at all for you to see there, bye bye. So, Einstein then praises labor unions, says how they are the only thing stopping us from falling into some sort of a dystopian anarcho-capitalism. So finally, Einstein mentions how in the labor market, there inevitably are going to be people who are skilled enough and are willing to work, but who are just not going to be employed. Having identified all those little branches of capitalism that kind of pierce your body like a bamboo sapling.
Because after just 3 days, our tortured torso is surely ready to talk.
Dude, the bamboo is growing into our poor dude.
Einstein basically says, how about we do something about it? And his response is to institute central planning that would basically build a better society that could then transition into socialism.
Dude, the bamboo is growing into our poor dude.
Yeah, so to sum up, Einstein was kind of a leftist, it's fair to say. It's a very brief article and he latches onto a lot of different subjects without really driving them home a lot of the time. In any case, yeah, it's pretty good. I would especially recommend the section where he talks about the relationship between money and media and politics. Send it to your MAGA chat cousin, maybe it would pill him. Because, I think that this is what Einstein wanted. His article is not like something that explores the borders of what is possible when it comes to socialist theory. It's got basically a bunch of pretty simple talking points that is supposed to start a conversation about socialism in America. And yeah, I would say that he succeeded at that. And yeah, it's supposed to be like a gentle introduction into leftist politics. It's pretty good. Check it out.